Yo, what's going on, guys? It's Houston Sports Talk back in another video today, and today I'm going to be talking about why the Houston Texans might be keeping Davis Mills as their quarterback for the next season in 2023, as it's looking like the Texans might stick with Davis Mills as their quarterback in 2023, as the Texans have made it clear that they're not too confident in another quarterback besides Bryce Young at 2, and are not, they're not that for sure on Stroud, Richardson, or Levis, which I'm glad they're not sure on Levis because I don't want him to come to Houston. I'd rather give Davis Mills another chance than bring in Levis. That's how serious I am. If you give Davis Mills a chance and don't bring in Levis, you get to get someone else at 2 like Will Anderson. So that's why I'd rather give Mills another chance than play Levis. But the Texans are not sure on any of the other quarterbacks besides Bryce Young. If the Panthers do not take Bryce Young and take C.J. Stroud, or God forbid Anthony Richardson, I think the Texans will for sure drop Mills in a heartbeat and draft Bryce Young. I think it's that simple for the Houston Texans. But if the Texans and DeMeco Ryans, who, keep in mind, is a defensive-minded head coach, he's a defensive coordinator, he was a defensive player in the NFL, and yes, I think right now the Texans' defense is solid. We have a really nice secondary with Jimmy Ward, who's a really nice veteran and has been a really nice safety over the last couple years. Derek Stingley Jr. and Jalen Petrie, the rookies from last year, really solid young guys. Jonathan Grenard, another young guy. A lot of other young, and Christian Harris, a lot of other young pieces. Some guys brought in. Denzel Perryman, just multiple guys brought in this offseason. So defense has improved. I think the defense compared to what it's been last season, because I think you got to improve, and you also have to include a healthy Sting next season, healthy Derek Stingley next year, and also all the assets improved, all the assets from free agency that we've added. The defense has been improved a lot than what it was last year. The defense was solid last year. It wasn't terrific, but it was solid. And with a full healthy Stingley next year, the defensive moves we've made in free agency, and adding in DeMeco Ryans as sort of anchor of the defense, I think that defense is going to be way better than it was next season. But if DeMeco and the Texans are not for sure on a quarterback at 2, if it's not Bryce Young, if it's C.J. Stroud, Anthony Richardson, or Will Levis, they're not for sure about, or not too positive about, then the Texans will for sure go to Will Anderson at 2, and DeMeco will just make that defense even better than it already is. So I think that in that case, I think that the Texans. And think about this: the Texans' running defense was awful last year. Besides the running defense, everything was pretty okay with the Texans' defense. And I think if you add in Will Anderson, potentially the running defense is way better. Do I think that is something we should do? Is drafting Will Anderson? I doubt not. I think as much as I want to see the Texans give Mills another chance and give him a third year with some of the assets the Texans have added in on offense and the help on defense and a new offensive coordinator, all the new coaching staff, which could make him a better quarterback, I think it's a little too risky for the Texans. That's another reason why I think the Texans might want to give Mills another chance. Not only not being sure on the other quarterbacks and also wanting to improve that defense even more than it already is, but also the fact that Davis Mills, he was pretty bad last year, but there was some times where he was solid last year. Most of the time he was crap, but there were some moments of last season where Davis Mills was a pretty solid quarterback. And if you consider the things that you've added in for Davis Mills this offseason, I think in his case, I think Davis Mills could improve. Let's go over the assets. Let's first start with the coaching staff. I know DeMeco Ryans is a defensive coordinator, he's a defensive guy, but I think Lovie Smith last season, I don't think he was a real confidence guy for Davis. I mean, I don't think he brought in. He didn't have the energy. I think DeMeco, even though he's more of the defensive guy, he thinks he didn't care for all 53 men on the roster. And I think if God forbid Davis is the quarterback, if he were to be the quarterback, I think D'Amico is going to try his best, with his confidence or whatever. I think D'Amico is going to would be a way better, coach to be around than Lovie Smith was. Also, the offensive coordinator change with, from Pep Hamilton to now Bobby Slowick. I think that's going to be a total difference too. Now you got the pieces you've added in on offense. It started with Robert Woods. He's a really solid wide receiver, veteran. After came in for the Titans last season, suffering an ACL injury the year before, had 600 receiving yards and 3 receiving touchdowns on an offense that basically the drill is. This is not, I'm not for sure here, but basically I'm thinking that the playbook. One of the biggest plays is, and one of the most run plays is, give the ball to Derrick Henry and get the F out of the way. So that's pretty solid. Get 5, I think it was like 580 or 600, whatever he had last year, and 2 or 3 touchdowns. Pretty solid in offense where they are always giving it to Henry. Then you signed Noah Brown, a wide receiver who had 400, 500 receiving yards with the Cowboys last season. As from time to time, he was the second, third wide receiver. He had like 4 or 5 touchdowns. He's a really solid wide receiver. Reminds me a lot of CeeDee Lamb, but can't really be CeeDee Lamb when you're playing with CeeDee Lamb. I think he could be the potential CeeDee Lamb of the Texans. I think he has a lot of potential in the slot or whatever. I think him and John Mechie will play really well together, and that's my next move. That's my next move on. John Mechie. He was on the roster last year, but he didn't play. He had leukemia. The adding of John Mechie, that's a third wide receiver for Davis Mills that he would have. So you got 3 wide receivers coming in, and then you add Dalton Schultz as well from the Cowboys, a really solid tight end. And then you add in backup running back, but the Bills starting running back, and now Texans backup running back, Devin Singletary. So this Texans offense has improved everywhere on pretty solid. With returning Mechie, Woods and Brown, Schultz and Singletary. And a little bit of a boosted O-line with Shaq Mason. So that's another thing to think about. And I think a couple other pieces in the O-line. So everything's improved on the Texans offense. So, in my opinion, maybe you don't start Mills, but here's what I will say. I think even if the Texans do draft a quarterback at 2, they should keep Mills on the roster. That's what I think. I think you keep Mills on the roster, see what he can do with the preseason with some of these new guys. Check it out. Why not? See what he can do. Obviously, he's not going to be the quarterback, but you might. If you let him play a little bit, let him, get some eyes on him, maybe he can become a trade asset if potentially, he looks really good preseason or in training camp with the new wide receivers, tight end and running back. Who knows? But it doesn't hurt to try it. But if the Texans should the Texans keep Davis Mills, I'd like to give the kid another chance with all the assets they've added in and the new boosted coaching staff. But I think it's too risky for the Texans. I really do. And I don't think they could afford another year of being terrible. And with Stroud being the quarterback, I think the Texans would be better with Stroud being the quarterback. But we've seen Mills. We've seen Mills with a absolute crap team. So it would be nice to see Mills with a decent, improved offense, with the offense that has improved into for the Texans. So we'll see what happens. You guys are your thoughts on the video. Let me know your thoughts on the idea. And that's it for the video. Peace out.